questions about, when can you get your shot? What is the city doing about it, and so on. And so with that, I know that the chief has a brief presentation prepared, and then we'll.
Good morning, Mayor. Good morning, Vice Mayor. Good morning, Commission, and everyone else listening. The city manager did a really good job of summarizing what's kind of going on. So I'll try to get more a little bit detail, and I'll start out with, I guess, a bit of a background on it. The governor, and keep in mind the timeline I'm going to give you here, but the governor's Order 20-315, which was signed December 23rd, 2 days before Christmas, detailed what the vaccine priorities would be. So this is right before Christmas, right prior to the New Year's break and all of those things. So a lot of people that are in place to deal with these things are either on vacation or break or whatever else is happening at the time. So the vaccine came out not at the most opportune time to start with. That being said, the governor's order says 65 and older. This is the initial rollout, 65 and older. Just for a point of clarification, CDC says 75 and older, but 65 and older, long-term care facility residents and staff, and healthcare professionals with direct patient contact. And hospitals can vaccinate what they would deem high-priority people. So that's pretty much the governor's order on who can be vaccinated. So I'll start with that. Our current status in the state is, from a vaccine perspective, the state has received, and this was as of last Friday, 1.2 million doses. Individuals that have been vaccinated is 514,000, and that the allocation moving forward, meaning starting Monday for the state of Florida, I'm not talking about Broward County, the entire state of Florida, is 250,000 doses. Now, with that being said, our population in Florida is roughly 22 million people. So you can do the math. The vaccines on that 1.2 million dosages received, for both of these, for the Pfizer and for the Moderna right now, and any other vaccine that's out currently on the market means you need 2 doses. So that means two different rounds. So, for us, if we were to vaccinate everyone in the state, that would mean over 40 million doses is what we're talking about. And we've only received 1.2 million. So just to start with that, it's a supply and demand issue. I'm getting a little feedback there. So it starts off, this is simply a supply and demand issue, and it's going to get better. But for right now, that's the group that's being targeted. Now, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about what the county's priorities are. Just so you know, all long-term care facilities have received their first dose the people that wanted to have received their first dose. So all of the nursing homes, long-term care facilities in Broward County, according to my report last week on Thursday, they have received that first dose. Most of the hospitals have already been vaccinated, and several of the frontline direct contact care providers are receiving their first dose, and this week most of our folks are getting their second dose. So it's slow, it's painful, and that's sort of where it is now. That being said, that's kind of like a background. There's 2 different means of receiving the medication right now in the state. We're talking about 250,000, and there's 2 different people. It's supposed to go either through the Department of Health, and keep in mind the Department of Health, even though it's a Broward County chapter, it's the state of Florida Department of Health that just happens to have a chapter in Broward County, and they have one in all 67 counties. Or the Department of Emergency Management. And the Department of Health and the Department of Emergency Management, the communication hasn't been the greatest. So some of the rollout has been not as smooth as we would like to see it. That being said, the site that we're currently dealing with, I'll just tell you this. There's 4 vaccination sites in Broward County parks right now that are for free vaccines to those high priority people we talked about, 65 and older, and the other things. That's Tree Winds Park in Coconut Creek. That's Vista View in Davie, Markham Park in Sunrise, and Central Broward Park in Laurel Hill. So those are the 4 sites that you can go for, and then a 5th site is opening up in Fort Lauderdale, and that's Holiday Park. And those are DOH sites. Now, the Department of Emergency Management, which is what the city manager alluded to earlier, has opened up a few sites as well. The governor's, trying his best to push this out any way he can, which is not a bad thing. It's just sometimes it gets a bit, one hand's not talking to the other. So the Department of Emergency Management is running a few sites as well. And those sites are, initiated to vaccinate residents 65 and older at Broward's largest, 55 and older type of communities. I don't get to make the decision on who those communities are, but I can just tell you the communities thus far are Windmore in Coconut Creek, Kings Point here in Tamarac, and Century Village in Deerfield Beach. So those are the sites that are being operated by the Department of Emergency Management. Now, I actually got a call from our local health department, Department of Health, asking me about the Tamarac site because they weren't even aware that was coming in. So there's some confusion in that. Here's a couple other complications with this is the state has not provided any real clear guidance from the Department of Health saying this is how it will be taken, initiated. We're not going to move forward and this is how we're going to roll out. They're allowing each individual Department of Health, to do their own thing. So there's 67 ways of distributing the vaccine. So people are getting frustrated because in one county they do it this way, in another county they do it that way. I'm from Lake County, and that's the county that made the national news, where they had the people first come, first served basis lined up on the side of the street. So there's a whole host of different ways of doing that. So that's what's happening with that. Locally, we are trying to avoid that. And the manager mentioned about Department of Emergency Management in Broward County and the Fire Chiefs Association and a couple other groups are trying to get together and say, wait a minute. We can do a better job of distribution. We can do a better job of vaccination if we can work together as a group. And that's what we're trying to do here. Last week I had a meeting with the Florida Fire Chiefs Association and the CFO to talk about the distribution and the complexities that are associated with that. And at the end of that meeting, what we did as the Fire Chiefs Association is offer our support to say, listen, fire stations are distributed strategically throughout most communities because we do response times, and that's an issue. So we would love to get involved in vaccination and distribution if asked to be. And so we did talk about that. And we in Broward County, all the fire chiefs have gotten together and we're trying not to, I know every fire chief is going to be getting pressure from their elected officials saying, listen, why not us? One community is getting the vaccine and we're not. So what's going on and what are you doing? And of course, when the manager hears that, he's going to be asking me. So what we've done is we've partnered up. Matter of fact, this afternoon, after we get off this conference call here, I saw that a press release came out from Coral Springs saying they've opened up their vaccination site. That's true, but it's a closed pod. And if you recall back what I just said, there's only so many doses. So even if we today open up a pod, which means a point of distribution site for vaccination here in Tamarac, the ability to get the dosages is going to be a challenge. So no matter how well we get it run, we got to make sure there's enough supply in order to meet that demand. But and here's another thing I'd like you to keep in mind. To open, if you all recall when we were doing COVID testing about 3 weeks over at the rec center, that site was supported by the city but run by the Department of Health, and we ran that for almost 4 weeks. And that site was we're talking about 300 people that were being tested a day, and that was a very busy day. We had traffic backed up down the street in that whole 9 yards. That only ran for 3 weeks. If we were planning on opening up a vaccination site, that's why we got to think about partnership. If we're thinking about and assuming there was enough medication, which is not, but just assume for a minute there was, and we opened up a point of distribution site in Tamarac, at a minimum it takes 30 people every day to run a pod site, 30. And that pod site would then be running generally speaking, they run 6 days a week. And we're talking about the day you give a vaccine, you're committed to that individual there, whomever you give, up for that second shot. So now you're on the hook for about a month period there. And then we're talking about doing this over a 6 month period, 6 to 9 months to try to get all of this vaccination out. One municipality, one city, one area is not going to be able to that's not a sustainable model. So what we want to do is partner up and try to make a sustainable model where, let's just say hypothetically, Coral Springs, Tamarac, and the surrounding municipalities get together, open up a pot, we rotate staff. That way we can sustain this, because if we try to open up one on our own, that's asking that's a big commitment, and I'm not sure how sustainable that is. So we want to make sure it's sustainable. So right now we don't have the doses, we don't have the vaccines available, but what we are doing in the background is planning for it and planning to be successful, and planning these partnerships and executing orders with agreements with the state and stuff. So once it does come around about, and we will have a plan in place and be ready to be successful and roll it out a little better than what's happening right now. There are some areas in the state, like Sarasota County, for instance, that have the fire department has completely taken over vaccinations, because it's just not something that Department of Health is geared up to do on a sustained basis. And we may end up in that same position. Can share with you. So our singleness website, it keeps crashing. That's why we try to release. And then I know Jennifer sent me in, but the site comes up periodically, and we can get registered, for those folks that are in this initial rollout. And we'll try to do the best we can. I try to get as much as information at this meeting. I got to tell you, this is so things change. So when there's anything significant, I give them a call. I'll you. But I'm available for questions. And one more thing before we get to questions is, you only have a very limited window, whether it's Pfizer or Moderna. You're talking 5 days if it's not refrigerated, maybe up to 30 days if it's refrigerated. And so you have a very small window. So not everybody's capable of the super cold storage, and not everyone's capable of the quantity of vaccinations that's required. We don't want to start throwing out good medication. So you have a very small window to work with. This will get better over the summer as we get more vaccines and more manufacturers coming online. And it'd be really good to get the single dose, so then we don't have to try to track and get the second dose out. And I'll take questions.